What's going on, guys? My name is Fusion, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Fusion Grows. Today's a special one because I'm actually going to be running a little experiment. We're going to take some cuttings from the same plant and we're going to be putting them through different situations to find out what the best method of propagation is. And I'm actually going to be sharing the results of that experiment all in the same video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have our test subject number 1, the wandering Jew. And as you can see, she's actually growing very well. She's nice and healthy. But the problem is that we actually have a pot growing back here with another plant in there, and this is suffocating that plant. It's not letting that other plant get any light. So this actually gives me the perfect opportunity to take some cuttings and run our little experiment. Besides, my wife already went ahead and bought a new plant for this spot, so it gives me an excuse to get rid of this plant anyway because I didn't really like it. And don't get me wrong, this plant is fine and all, but for some reason it just never resonated with me, so I'm actually glad that we're gonna be able to get rid of it today. Alright, so first things first, before we take any cuttings or do anything else, the first thing you want to do is sterilize your scissors or your knife or whatever it is that you have. So I just like to do that with some plain old Lysol. Just take the can right here, spray her down, and that should do, guys, because if Lysol can kill everything else, 99.9% of viruses and bacteria, I'm pretty sure it can also kill fungal and bacterial problems that you may run into when dealing with plants. Alright, so I got a little container of water here. I'm just gonna put this to the side. And when we take our cuttings, that's where I'm gonna put them for now to chill out until we finish making all the cuts. Alright, here we go. So we got our scissors nice and disinfected. We're gonna come in here, we're going to determine where we want the plants to be cut at. I want to give it room for the new plant that's gonna go in here. So I think I'm gonna go all the way up to about this point here. So I'll just come in there and start taking a few cuttings. Now when we do this, you want to make sure that you do a nice clean straight cut. When we prepare the cutting for propagation, I'll show you guys how to do that, but for now we just want nice straight cuts so it's easy for the plant to heal. There you have it, guys. This is how it ended up, and don't worry, this plant will bounce back. I'm gonna go through there, I'm gonna clip out all the dead leaves, I'm gonna make this thing nice and shiny. And I also left a lot of the foliage growing on this direction here. Next thing I gotta do off camera is go ahead and replace that plant, but that's not the focus. What we're about to focus on is how to propagate all of these cuttings in a variety of different methods to find out what the best way of propagating is. Alright, so before we do anything else, I want to wash these cuttings a little bit, just in case there was any bacteria or fungal growth on the leaves of the plants. We can go ahead and clean that stuff off with a little gentle plant wash. Now this is the one I use. You could probably find it on Amazon or something, but it smells like peppermint, so that's why I like to use it. And it's actually concentrated, so you don't have to use too much. A little goes a long way. So I'm just gonna take a splash of this stuff here. There we go. And then I'm gonna come over here and just give it a nice little mix. And you don't have to go too hard. You can be gentle with it. All you're doing is just cleaning off the leaves and the stems a little bit. And I'll just let them sit in here for about 5 minutes while I get everything ready. Alright, it's been a few minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and take the water out, rinse them, and put fresh water in here. There we go, we got some fresh water in there. Alright, so when we're preparing the cutting for propagation, you need to make sure of 2 things. Number 1, you want to make sure that you take your cutting towards the top of the cutting, not towards the bottom, because this is actually where the highest concentration of auxin is. And number 2, you're also going to have that concentration of auxin right where a node is. So, for example, right here is a node. Every single one of these little knuckles here is a node. So you want to make sure that you take your cutting a little bit below that. And you want to make sure you do that because that's going to give you a better chance of rooting. So yeah, anyway, we want to look at the plant. We want to see about the size that we want. We got 1, 2, 3. So here's the 4th node. So I'm going to take my cutting directly below that node right there. Just like, and at a 45-degree angle. Boom. Just like that. Then we're going to look at our cutting and I'm going to be like, all right, this is probably going to go because I don't want the plant to waste a lot of its energy trying to keep these leaves alive. So you're going to want to remove the leaves that are closest to the bottom. Go ahead and get rid of this leaf. And that should be good. That looks like a pretty good cutting to me. Alright, so experiment number 1. We're going to kick things off with the tried and true method of the water cup. All you got to do with this method is you take your cutting, you put it in the cup of water, and that's it. And all you would do is you take this cup and you put it somewhere where it receives indirect light, and that's it. You leave it there and wait for the roots to show up. And of course, as the water level goes down, you want to add a little bit of water as needed. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and add a few more cuttings in here before we move on to the next experiment. All right, so that's 5 right there. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next experiment, and if we have some plants left over, then I'll see if I can put 6 or 7 in each one. All right, so up next, we're gonna try another very common method, and that's soil propagation. So all you gotta do for this one is very simple. Just take some soil, put it in a little styrofoam cup or a little, one of them solo cups or something. Thankfully, I got one of these little nursery pots that I bought from, actually, I didn't buy this. Then I'm gonna take something like these little Allen keys here, and I'm gonna make a few indentions into the soil. So I'm gonna start off with 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the only thing you really got to worry about for this method is just making sure that you got some soil with some drainage. But you also want to make sure that the soil is good at retaining moisture. But very simple with this one, it's not rocket science. You just take your cutting, same way as we did before for the water cup method. You want to look at it from the top, count down like 3 or 4 nodes right here, make your cutting. Hey buddy. Oh, that's cool. And then you want to come in here, you want to get rid of your leaves that are closest to the bottom. And all you're doing is just sticking it into the soil. Make sure you got some nice contact all the way around. There we go. So usually, if I'm dealing with a plant that has a stronger stem, I just go ahead and shove it in there. But the stems for this plant, for the wandering Jew, are actually really flexible. Yeah, we're gonna go with flexible. They're very flexible. Anyway, that's 1, that's 2 right there, that's 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. And that's it. With this method, all you want to do is make sure that you keep the soil nice and moist. And the same thing with the water cup method, you want to put it somewhere that it receives indirect light. Alright, so now we're going to go into a method that's a little bit more unconventional, and I'm talking about perlite. That's it, nothing else, just straight perlite. The theory is that this should provide both air and water. So in theory, it should promote healthy root development. But I don't know, we'll see. That's the reason why we're running an experiment, to see how well it does. I'm taking some off right here. And this one's gonna be pretty straightforward. Similar to the soil, we're just gonna take our cuttings and dip them straight into the perlite. I'm gonna do 6 because I believe that's how many we're doing per cup so far. All right, so that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, 5, and 6 right here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next method. Alright, so now we're going to try something that works similar to soil, but it doesn't have any nutrients. Now, you could read this one or two ways. You could say, okay, he's probably going to use something like a coconut coir or something like a peat moss. So that's what we're doing. We're using peat moss. In theory, it actually should work pretty well because peat moss is good at retaining moisture while providing aeration at the same time. But I'm a little bit concerned with its acidity because I'm not going to be amending it with anything, and peat moss is naturally acidic. But it wouldn't be fair for me to add something to this, and I'm not adding anything else to any of the other experiments. Alright, so same thing, we're going to go with 6 cuttings. Preferably, we need to take at least 2 or 3 from the very tip because that's where most of our rooting hormone is focused. Ready to go, straight into the soil. So that's 1, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. That makes 6 right here. Alright, let's go ahead and put this to the side and continue with our next experiment. Okay, we're going to move on now to experiment number 005. This is actually peat moss cousin, coconut coir. Same thing with peat moss. It's an inert medium that doesn't have any nutrients in it, but the difference is that it has a slightly different consistency and is not acidic. Anyway, I want to make sure it's nice and broken up. Alright, there we go. That should be enough. Alright, let's go ahead and do the exact same thing that we've been doing. 6 cuttings. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to push these down a little bit, make sure they have some good contact with the coconut coir. And we'll just put it to the side so we can continue on with the rest of our experiments. Alright, so for the next 2 experiments, I'm actually going to need this right here. So give me 1 second, let me take these plants out of there. Alright, so these next 2 are actually very similar, and they're going to be competing side by side. This one is going to be a showdown between one very special mineral that I have in this bag here, and it's called vermiculite. I'm going to take this paper here, and I'm going to lay it across here, so that way it can help me divide between its competitor. And this competitor that I'm talking about here is a 50-pound bag of some play sand. Now the reason I'm going with play sand, you want to use sand, but the reason I'm going with play sand specifically is because it's actually cleaned and sterilized for you, which is perfect for something like this. So I'm just gonna make a tiny little cut on the side somewhere, probably on this side because it looks the most jacked up. Oh, and pro tip, you don't want to use your scissors for anything that's not cutting plants because it's gonna dull out your scissors eventually. But I have a knife sharpener, so anytime my scissors get dull, I just go ahead and sharpen them up. Let's go ahead and pour some sand in there. There we go, that should be good. Alright, so I'm gonna just take this, flatten it out, and then take my piece of paper, bring it over to about the halfway point of this container, push the vermiculite over on this side. I think I'm gonna need a little bit more vermiculite. Thankfully, this stuff doesn't weigh 50 pounds. That bag of sand is 50 pounds. And we're just gonna pour some in here. There we go, that should do. Straighten that out. Let me pull you guys in so you can see me pull the paper out. Dang, okay. I thought I hit the record button, guys. I'm sorry. Then I'm gonna come around real quick. We're gonna take a few cuttings and we're gonna go for 6 cuttings on the sand, 6 cuttings on the vermiculite. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and squeeze this one in between these. All right, now let's get 6 cuttings into the vermiculite. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and last but most certainly not least, 6. Let me go ahead and get some water in there. I'm gonna sprinkle it from the leaf down to the stem. That way I can clean those leaves off. Alright, so that should be fine for now. When I put the lid on and I let it sit for about 24 hours, the moisture should kind of spread out. And if I see that it's still too dry, I'll just go ahead and add more water into it. Alright, so the last method of propagation that I have is the old Ziploc bag method. Now, a lot of the times when people do this method, it's usually with like hard, woody, like trees, or you could do it with things like figs and things like that. But basically all you're doing is you're just gonna take a napkin, and I lost my water bottle, give me a minute. Alright, got my water bottle. Then you're just gonna take this, fully saturate your napkin. There we go. And then you want to take and spray the inside of your Ziploc bag a few times. And all you're going to do is you're just going to take your napkin, open it up, put a few cuttings on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Spray your cuttings, and then just take your other half of the napkin, fold it over the stems. Make sure that your leaves are out of the stem like this. And then you're just going to take this and stick it in your Ziploc bag. Take this, put it inside the Ziploc bag. I'm gonna spray 1 or 2 times for good measure. And you don't gotta go too hard with the water, because the whole reason why you have your Ziploc bag is to maintain the moisture in there. And that's it. You just put this somewhere where it's gonna receive indirect light, and you go in there once or twice a day, let the air out, let fresh air go in there, and you should be good to go. Okay, so now all I have to do is just clean up this mess, take all my experiments over there, somehow make some space for them, and I'll pull you guys right back in here. Alright, let me show you guys what I ended up coming up with. So I got 2 tubs stacked on top of each other, and then right here I got a tray with all the different experiments on it. It's going to receive indirect sunlight from the window. It's also going to get some being reflected off the walls from all my grow lights. And I also have some other lights over there. So a lot of light should be indirectly hitting this spot. And one little plant did sneak in here. There's a begonia that's just rooting in some water, and it's actually doing pretty good. So I got high hopes for this one right here, the water cup. Anyway, there you have it, guys. They're off to the races. The only thing that I'm going to do is come in here once a day with a little spray bottle, and I'm just going to hit the leaves of all of the ones that are exposed. But besides that, they're on their own. So I'll pull you guys right back in here in a few weeks for the results. Alright, it's been a little over 2 weeks since we started this experiment, and now it's time to check in on the results. Alright, first up, let's check in on the water cup. If you guys remember, we did 6 plants per experiment. So here we go. Let's see the first one. Oh wow, there's actually quite a bit of roots. So I don't damage any of the roots. I'm actually just gonna pull them all out at the same time. Alright, here we go. So the first one, clearly and obviously, as you can tell, it definitely rooted, and it has a nice amount of roots. Look at that. This second one is looking pretty good too. This third one is rooted pretty nicely also. Number 4 didn't do as good as the other ones, but it did root here. and here. And then for our last two, we also have some root development going here and some root development on this one back here. Not bad at all. It looks like the water cup method went 6 for 6. Alright, our second experiment that we're going to be checking in on is soil propagation method. I have high hopes for this one. It seems like a few of these are doing pretty good, but some other ones not so much. So let's pull them out and see what's going on beneath the surface. There we go. Alright, let's go ahead and investigate. This one here looks like it's got some roots. You can't see it too well, but if you look at the bottom there, you can see that this thing covered in soil is actually a root. So 1 for 1 so far. Put this to the side and take a look at another one here. It seems like this one rooted as well. This one's got more root development than the other one does. 2 for 2 so far. Alright, let's check on this one right here. That doesn't seem to be doing too great. The leaves feel like they don't really have any water in them. They're droopy and everything. And as far as the root development, I don't think we have any. Alright, yeah, I was wrong about this one. If you look closely right here, that right there is actually a baby little root right there. It did root, so I'm gonna call that a success. Alright, let's check on plant number 4 here. It has one root coming out the side here, so we can call this one a success. Alright, number 5 has clearly succeeded. It has a nice little root ball here, and it's in good health too, so definitely a success. And then last, but most certainly not least, this one here, something here is developing. I'm gonna assume that that was gonna turn into roots if it was allowed more time to do so. So the soil propagating method, I think we can call success. Just like the water cup, they went 6 for 6. Alright, up next we got peat moss, and this one's actually looking really good, but I can tell that we're gonna have some failures. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, here we go. Starting from the top, number 1, we've got one who has positive root development. I see here a few different roots developing, some this way, that way. So the first cutting, we can go ahead and call that a success. Number 2, we have roots developing as well, as you can see up here and down there. So we can go ahead and call this one a success. Number 3 is looking healthy still. We got a root coming out the side and another little baby root developing back here. We can go ahead and call this one a success. Number 4 also has root development at the top and a little bit at the bottom here too. So we are 4 for 4 so far. Alright, up next we got this tiny little cutting. It started trying to develop some new growth, but as far as roots, I actually don't see any. Seems like everything down here is actually dead. It seems like it pinched itself off right here at this node and it began developing new foliage. However, because the part that was actually below the soil did not develop any roots, I'm gonna call this one a failure. And then last, but most certainly not least, I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to see the results. This one is definitely a failure. So when it comes to the peat moss, the results actually turned out to be 4 out of 6. Alright, let's continue this thing with peat moss closest competitor, coconut coir. And I honestly got high hopes for this one, I'm not gonna lie to you. From the beginning, I expected the coconut coir would do better than the peat moss, but now it's time to see if my predictions were true. Up first, for coconut coir, we have a success. As you can see, we have one nice root developing here, and the plant is in overall good health. Up next, we have another beautiful plant with nice developed roots, so we can go ahead and call this a success as well. Let's see if we can go 3 for 3 by looking at this one here that does not look that good. However, the root development is there, so we have another success. 4 for 4, clear as day, beautiful root development in 3 different places, so we can call this one a success as well. Number 5 also has nice, decent, I would say, root development. It only has one strand coming out this way, but we will call this a success as well. And last, but most certainly not least, number 6 has tried to develop new foliage here and here, but down below, it seems like we also have some root development down here and up here. So when it comes to the coconut coir, it actually ended up going 6 for 6. Alright, now we can get into the one that I've been dying to see the results of, perlite. This one is really cool because I didn't know what to expect. I mean, it's perlite. Straight off the bat, I could tell you that this one is probably dead, severed itself off at this point here. The only part that's still living is this very top piece here, but it's not showing any root development and it's starting to die. So the first one is dead. However, some of these over here do show some promise. If we take a look at the first one here, but right here, there you go, you see that? That's a root right there. I think it's pretty safe to say that this big piece here is a success. Alright, let's take a look at another one here. It looks like this piece broke off. It surely has something going on here at the end, but I don't know if I can call that root development. However, for the rest of the plant, which was underneath the perlite, there is no root development. Alright, we got another one here. As you can tell, this one is very clearly a success. We got roots coming out here, here, and here. Moving right along, we got another one here that severed itself off. I don't know if this little thing on its own would have had enough energy to root, but because it's inconclusive, I'm gonna call this one inconclusive. Alright, moving right along to the last one of the perlite. I believe we don't have any root development for this one, and the plant is starting to die. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this one a fail. So it seemed like we were just gonna have 2 success, 2 inconclusive, and 2 fails. But if you look at this one, it actually has 1 little root coming out right there. So that brings our total up to 3 successful rootings, 2 inconclusives, and then 1 fail. And now for the grand finale, we have the results from our head-to-head between the sand and the vermiculite. Let's start off on the sand side. The way I'm gonna do it is I'm just gonna dig down and I'm gonna try to scoop that plant from the bottom. I'm just gonna squeeze the sand out from around it so we don't hurt any of the roots. And then let's see. Oh yeah, look at that. We got a few roots already. Let's jump across here to his competitor, the vermiculite, and see how it's doing. Let's see if we could tie up the score here. Oh yeah, easily. Look at that. Root development on the bottom, in the middle, over here at the top. Basically anywhere we had contact with the vermiculite or the sand, it seems like so far it's been showing results. But anyway, that's 1 point for the vermiculite and 1 point for the sand. Let's get back on the other side of the court here and scoop out another one from the team sand. And it seems like we got some decent root development here too. We got roots coming out of here, and then I think we also have a root coming out right here on the side. We might even have some roots all the way up here. I'm not really sure because all the sand. Oh yeah, that's definitely roots. So another point for team sand. Jump back over here on the vermiculite and see what we got. Ladies and gentlemen, we got roots. So 2 for 2 for the vermiculite. Alright, sand, let's see what you got. Let's try this one here. So it looks like we have some root development here at the top, a little bit root development here where we had contact with the sand, but we actually don't have any roots forming at the bottom, which is very interesting. Either way, we got roots, so that's a success. Alright, vermiculite, let's see if you could tie up the score. Absolutely. Vermiculite did not disappoint. They tied up the score. And let's jump right back over here to the sand and see if we got some roots. Oh yeah, I can already tell we got some roots. Look right here. Super long root coming out right here from the top. However, when you get beneath the soil, we also have a nice cluster of roots developing here. But again, it doesn't seem like we're getting root development at the bottom of the sand for some reason. Either way, nice healthy root development. So moving right along to vermiculite, let's see if plant number 5 will have root development as well. And sure enough, roots all the way at the bottom, in the middle, and at the top. Another win for vermiculite. I thought that was number 5, it was actually number 4. So now let's look at 5 and 6 of the sand team because they're side by side, so I think I should be able to just scoop both of them right up. And it looks like we have some root development here at the top, and for the other one we also have some root development here at the top, not so much underneath the sand however. Alright, let's check on the last 2 on team vermiculite. Let's go ahead and scoop them up here. Sure enough, we got some nice healthy root development underneath, in the middle, and at the top as well. And for the last one on team vermiculite, as you can see, we got some root development here and some more root development there. So when it comes to sand and vermiculite, both teams actually went 6 for 6. Alright, moving right along to the plastic bag method. Let's see what we got. So this was actually one of the easiest ones to maintain besides the water cup. And now we have to see if there was any benefit of using this method at all. So right off the bat, I can see that there's some roots falling off the sides. The overall health of the leaves actually looks pretty good. But now we have to look at what we came here for, the root development. And that should reveal what we're looking for. Oh yeah, wow, look at this. I'm gonna bring you guys a little closer. Look at that one. Roots, roots. Look at that one. Roots, roots. We even have some foliage trying to develop underneath the napkin. And every single one of these has root development as well. So the plastic bag method is not to be underestimated because it went 6 for 6. Good job, plastic bag. So that makes me pretty happy because this was actually a very simple method. Overall, we got some pretty interesting results. The water cup method actually proved itself, and now I see why so many people use it. I mean, it's so simple. All you do is just throw your cuttings in some water and wait. Not only that, but the plants actually stayed in good health the entire time. Now, the soil method actually surprised me a little bit. I expected to have a little bit more die-off because, as you know, soil is biologically active. It has things like fungi, bacteria, diseases, but we actually didn't run into any issues. So in my personal opinion, using the soil propagating method is a pretty good way to go. Now, if we look at the two cousins, the coconut coir and the peat moss, I think it's safe to say that, in my personal biased opinion, coconut coir is the way to go, only because I'm not too big of a fan of peat moss. However, don't get me wrong, I use it and I will continue to use it in the future, just not for things like propagation. So out of the two, if it's up to me, go with coconut coir, but if you want to, go with peat moss and you'll have pretty decent results as well. Now the perlite, I already went ahead and took them out of the little container and put them in some soil, but to be honest with you, I wasn't too happy with the results. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was slightly disappointing. So from here on out, I don't think I'm going to be using perlite or recommending anybody else to use perlite for propagation. The sand and vermiculite method actually turned out excellent. To be honest with you, it's actually one of my most preferred methods. I didn't think that it was going to have such high success. I don't know if it's because it was an enclosed container and it had a good amount of humidity, or if because it was easier for the roots to go through the sand and through the vermiculite, but either way, phenomenal results, and I will be recommending it from here on out. And then last but not least, the simple plastic bag method actually turned out to be phenomenal. This is a very budget-friendly option, same as the water cup. But in my opinion, I think I'd rather go with something like the plastic bag method before I do something like the water cup. And only because it was such a hands-off approach. The water cup, I always had to go back and put a little bit of water, make sure that I maintained a certain water level. But with the Ziploc bag, I actually never went back in there and misted them. They maintained humidity the entire time, and it had phenomenal root development. Now I just have to take these and transfer them into some soil. Anyway, that's going to be it for today, guys. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Fusion Grows. I hope I see you guys again on the next one, and have a wonderful day.